Hi, everyone. Welcome to Nom Watch Review, part of Nom Talk Network. On this show, we review the latest film drop or throwback celebrating a milestone while eating and drinking our favorite movie snacks and drinks. Um, don't forget that we have merch before we get started into this, and you can find that in our shop in the About section on Twitch, or get the link by typing in merch in the chat. Note that subscribers to our Twitch channels get discounts, so check that out. I'm your host, Erric Ramirez, and right now I am eating candy because confections. I wasn't able to go and get a confection, but I do have this lovely chocolate pizza from Valentine's Day, so I thought that was close enough. And I'm, of course, drinking water because hydration, and I'm going to Vegas this weekend, so I'm trying to get as much water as possible. Um, but I want to introduce you to our guests for today, Derrick, Mike, and Jen. Thank you guys for being here. We'll start with you, Mike. What are you snacking and drinking on tonight?
Yeah, so this is going to be a weird selection, but I'm going to an Oscar party and I'm testing recipes for what I'm supposed to bring. I've got a snack, or rather a drink themed to a famous blockbuster movie that came out last year. The drink is called a Milky Fizz. It is basically desert pear, syrup with club soda and cream. And I got the recipe because Disneyland used to have it and they took it off the menu and I miss it and I want to make it myself now. So, but it's pink, just like the background and just like the Grand Budapest Hotel. So, hey, and it's also from an Oscar nominated movie, which the Grand Budapest Hotel was. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. And that drink sounds fantastic. Um, Thank you. Derrick, what are you snacking and drinking on tonight?
Well, sorry guys, I'm gonna be super lame, and I'm just drinking my normal water from my very rundown R2D2 water bottle. Not nearly as exciting as this wonderful drink that Mike has created. But that's what I got. Hydrating.
Good, good. Hydration is key. Everybody hydrate. Speaking of which, Q in the chat, you guys, he's going to spend some time with us, and he's under the weather, so he is actually hydrating very much. So feel better, Q. But moving on, Jen, thank you for being here. What are you snacking and drinking on?
So I got what confections Target had, which was I have some Madeline cookies and little alleged 2-bite cupcakes, but let's face it, they're 1 bite. I love a challenge. I of course have my water, and then I have, excuse me, Charlie, you already had your treats, sir. In my fanciest Chippendale teacup, I made some peaches and cream tea. It looks like it's naughty tea, but it's just tea that's blurry apparently. So it's been steeping. No, my camera's over here. So yeah, tea and confection seemed appropriate. This was my son's suggestion. He's a big Wes Anderson fan, so I let him pick my snacks tonight.
Oh, cool. Good. Well, thank you guys all for being here. Before we start getting into this movie, I do want to say that we are back to fundraising for the Trevor Project with the goal of $200. We are at 32% of our goal. So go in there, show some support, donate, because it is a great cause, the Trevor Project. But now onto the show, guys. Tonight we are talking about the 2014 Oscar-nominated film, The Grand Budapest Hotel, which, surprisingly enough, premiered in the United States on March 7th, which is tomorrow. So we're almost there. We're missing it by a day. So this movie, before we get into like breaking down everything, I want to know, like, when you guys first saw this movie, what were your thoughts, your popcorn ratings, and just like how you feel it's like kind of aged over time. We'll start with you on this one, Derrick.
Yeah, so I've been a Wes Anderson fan for quite some time. I find most of his earlier work to just be absolutely fantastic. I love the way that he deals with, kind of loss and grief and friendship, and just really has a very interesting view of humanity where he kind of tries to blend the best and worst of both of it and really explore what that feels like through kind of quirky characters. So I've always been a huge fan. So naturally, with something like The Grand Budapest, I remember seeing it in theaters, and there is such a wonderful, like, cynical whimsy that he's able to create in this movie, and it feels so much of a leap from, not necessarily, I mean, I would argue that it's probably one of his best, but just in terms of just everything that he creates in this film, it's such a leap from everything that came before it. Even something like Moonrise Kingdom, which is him kind of exploring a little bit more of that kind of that cynical whimsy, right, where it feels a little bit more lighthearted, even though he's dealing with very dramatic subjects. So I remember just watching this and just being absolutely blown away. There's tons of reasons as to why, but as far as score, I juggled between a 4.5 and a 5 because I think this is just absolute peak Wes for me. This is a top 3, maybe even top 2 out of all of his films. It's so resonating. I think it still completely holds up. Even 10 years later, I watched it today in preparation for the show, and it's so delightful. Like, it's just a delightful, adventurous romp that has everything you love about Wes Anderson, but it also has things that casual Wes Anderson fans can take a part of. So it keeps intact everything that you love about the Royal Tenenbaums, Bottle Rocket, the Life Aquatic. It's got all of the, Darjeeling Limited, all of those things that you love about Wes are all there, but it's also so accessible. Like, you don't have to have seen any of those films to just be completely bought into just this vibrant, pink, silly world that he kind of creates in the heart of fascism and like in the heart of like World War II, and somehow it's just funny throughout. This is just such a gorgeous film. I absolutely love everything about it. I settled on a 4.5, but I could be convinced to give this movie a perfect score.
We'll do it by the end of this.
All right.
But yes, no, I agree with you. I gave it a 4.5 as well. I just think this movie is brilliantly written, shot, everything. There was no lag time for me. And the casting of this film is amazing. Their comedic timing and everything, especially Ray Fiennes, like nobody thought he could do it and did an amazing job. So that's why I also had to score it a 4.5, because I just think there's no other better Wes Anderson film, in my opinion. But we'll go to you now, Mike. What is your popcorn score, and when did you first see this film, and what did you think?
Yeah, so I missed it in theaters, which broke my heart because I am a Wes Anderson fan, have been since Rushmore and Royal Tenenbaums, and for the most part, up until Grand Budapest Hotel, I think Tenenbaums was like my favorite Wes Anderson movie. There wasn't anything wrong with Life Aquatic or Darjeeling or Moonrise. They were all wonderful movies, but nothing really topped Royal Tenenbaums for me. And then I managed to thankfully see Grand Budapest Hotel on home entertainment when it came out, and because I missed it in theaters, and I found something that ended up topping my love for Royal Tenenbaums, and it was this movie. I think this is a period of Wes Anderson's career where he really just started delving into something a little bit more whimsical and fantastical than a lot of his other films. And I thought that was brilliant. I thought it was like watching a work of art come to life. But more than that, and this is something that I love about his work in general, taking that whimsy and taking that beauty and taking that artistic look and feel of this world and marrying it with what he does with characters, which is one of the best things that I love about him as a writer and a director. The relationships that he always creates between his characters is always so multi-layered and complex. And here we see that in the relationship between Zero and Monsieur Gustave, and Agatha, and basically everything going on here, but primarily between those two and how it develops. And it just becomes one of the sweetest father-son relationships that ever play out in his movies, which, as we know, have so many themes about father-son relationships. It's always explored in every single one of his movies. So to me, there was something almost like reading as the movie depicts, like a beautiful, gorgeous literary work of art, but playing out on screen and being just of this original story and world and characters. So yeah, I think this probably is my favorite Wes Anderson film, just for all of that, all of those reasons. So 4.5. Yeah.
Hey, I want to just comment on something that he said really quickly, because I think it's super important, because everybody talks about the style and the art and the production design, that fastidious production design that Wes Anderson creates, center framing, that dollhouse shape. And you touched on something that I want to make sure everybody recognizes, like Wes Anderson is often imitated, never duplicated. And it is because of the characters that he creates within these dollhouse structures. So, you have all these imitation AI arts that recreate Wes Anderson for Star Wars. And that's funny. And you nailed the aesthetic. But what is truly important and what truly makes something like the Grand Budapest Hotel continue to last for so long are those characters, is that deep, just gorgeous father-son story that he deals with, and all the characters that you really do fall in love with. The world feels so lived in, even if it is fantastical and it's whimsical and it's clearly not real, the characters are, and that's what makes it so great. So I love that you pointed that out, and I just wanted to hammer that home. For anybody listening, yes, I'm a huge Wes Anderson stan, so I'm going to be doing this all night. I apologize. This is my nerddom. Let's go. So.
Yes,
we love it.
I love it. Yes, no, I love it. I just gush over Wes Anderson if you might. And I won't do this to you now. I'll do this later to inspiration. I will get to it. But Jen, what is your popcorn score, and what did you think about this movie when you first saw it?
So I first saw this movie 2 days ago.
Wow.
This was my first Wes Anderson movie.
Oh.
Yes. So I tried to watch, and I tried to watch a Wes Anderson movie, and I'm not going to say which one because I'm going to go back and rewatch it and then give it fresh eyes. But I tried to watch a Wes Anderson movie years ago, and I couldn't get into it. I was in a different place in my life too. So there was a lot going on, and I'm going to chalk it up to that. And I think what happened is the movie, I couldn't connect with it. I'm really good with symbolism. I'm really good at reading into things and picking up on stuff. For whatever reason, I couldn't connect with the movie. And honestly, it made me feel dumb, and I didn't like that. And because I know I'm not. And I got mad at the movie, Charlie. And so I avoided it. And my son has always been such a big fan. And I'm like, okay. I don't think he's in here. No, I'm just kidding. I had to give it a shot. So I told him, I'm like, I signed up for this purposely so it would make me watch it.
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved it. It's visually, God, I could just drink this movie. It's just beautiful. I want to live in the hotel in its heyday. Not so much in the 80s. Those colors, the green, the brown, I gave it a solid 4 because I need to watch it again. Mm-hmm. And I know if I watch it again, it's going to go up. But I think there's more I need to absorb. But yeah, no, I enjoyed it, and I already know that I'm gonna watch The French Dispatch next because my son told me Jeffrey Wright's in that, so that sealed the deal right there. So
he is in that, and he is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think The French Dispatch is one of the weaker ones, to be honest. But
good, because then my expectations can only be high, right? So
yeah.
Nowhere to go but up. But he sent me his ranked list from Letterboxd of Anderson movies, so I'm gonna pick my way through that. But no, I enjoyed it a great deal. I loved the story. I loved the characters, and just the age range of the cast he put together. I text my son at one point in all caps, "Is that Harvey Keitel?" Just what's going on? It was just such an eclectic cast he put together that worked, that in any other director and writer's hands probably wouldn't have.
Yeah. I think too, this is one of those movies where the cast starts coming to Wes versus Wes going out and kind of working with it. Yes, there's a lot of the same people, but the Grand Budapest feels very much like people want to work with Wes Anderson. And that's how you get people like Harvey Keitel that has all of 3 lines and he's on screen for 30 seconds. Your Bill Murrays, your Tilda Swintons, all of these people that just clearly love working with Wes Anderson all seem to flock to him to be like, "Hey, are you making another movie? Yeah, I want to be in that. I don't care what the role is. Just sign me up."
They keep coming back for more. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you guys. And now we're going to go sing mode for a little bit. So I did not want to do that to you, Jen. I am going to jump into the chat because Q Ball has said his review and popcorn rating of Grand Budapest Hotel. I've seen it and I like it, but I give it a 4 out of 5. I like the cinematic vibes and the art direction, but the dark, dry humor was really centered around the movie. I like dark humor sometimes, but I would love a wacky, silly humor here and there in a movie setting like this. Um, but yeah.
Well done. Wonderful, Eric. That was wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you. I don't know how long we have much more going for this. So producer Seth, you'll have to let me know. But you picking up on that, Derrick, of the actors in this film, a lot of them he did use before and were like Royal Tenenbaums and everything. But a lot of them were new, like Ray Fiennes, Saoirse Ronan, and all of them were brand new, and he's worked with them over and over and over again in these new casts. But let's break down the movie a little bit. And I'm going to stop so I can break down the movie. But let's go through the movie, what happens, and then we'll discuss that a little bit before we get into other things. So the Grand Budapest Hotel starts off with a teenage girl visiting a monument of a writer who penned the book, The Grand Budapest Hotel. Then it jumps back in time to 1968 with an author going into the Grand Budapest to visit the location. And at this point, it's in an formerly known country called Zabrowska, which the Grand Budapest was originally. Once a luxurious hotel, it fell into hard times. It's brown. It's kind of ugly. There's not really many guests there anymore. But the author meets the current owner, Mr. Zero Mustafa, who recounts the story of how he becomes the hotel's owner and why he holds on to it and keeps it despite obviously making no money. Zero's story starts in 1932, so it goes all the way back to Mustafa. When the hotel was in its heyday, it was bright pink, this hotel that we see behind us, me and Mike, when it was that. And he is under the guidance of Monsieur Gustave, who he runs the hotel and stoops the old ladies and everything like that. He's the hotel concierge. Gustav is aimed to please his guests and gives them whatever they want, especially, like I just said, the wealthy blonde women, because all of them happen to be blonde. And the story revolves around one of these women, a wealthy Madame D. And so you meet her, and she's worried. She doesn't want to leave and everything. And she says, "Pray for me, light a candle." Then come to find out that they find out she's dead. They go to her house to see what happened and stuff like that. And turns to find out they're reading the will. And she loved Gustav so much that she bequeathed him a Renaissance painting called Boy with Apple, and pissed off everybody, her son Dmitri and everybody. And
psychopath Willem Dafoe, which I absolutely adore.
Psychopath Willem Dafoe, but pisses them off, and they're like, "Well, you have to get out of my house. It's not your painting." And then Zero and Gustav end up stealing said painting and going back to the Budapest Hotel. The cops show up, arrest him. He goes to jail, where we meet Harvey Keitel, everything. And then he escapes jail, goes back to kind of the Budapests. Psychopathic Willem Dafoe goes and gets killed and pushed off a cliff. Saoirse Ronan's there because she's Zero's girlfriend, everything. But it's just like a fun time at the end. Come to find out there's a secret riddle behind the painting. They read it, and she ends up actually leaving everything to Gustav, the hotel, the Grand Budapest, her house, everything, all the money. And Gustav says that if anything happens to him, that Zero will get it. While they're on a train, and he's standing up for Gustav from these war guys, and come to find out they end up killing Gustav, and Zero gets everything. And in his honor, he keeps the hotel. Boy with Apple is hanging up behind the concierge station and everything like that. And it's just roundabout, like, nice ending, kind of, even though Saoirse Ronan's character does die. But he's there. He tells the story to the writer and author, and then it kind of just ends What were you guys' feelings about the story? I have no issues with it. I love the pacing of it. I love the story. I love what they did, what the actors were able to do. So I have no complaints. We'll start with you on Jen. Since this is your first time seeing a Wes Anderson and everything. What were your thoughts on the story?
I thought the pacing was really good. I liked the kind of caper feel to it. Like it had moments where it was like the little Keystone Cop caperish, but then also it smoothed out and you got a little more story and then a little more caper. But it never hit like the point where it was too frenetic and you were just like, whoa, slow down, Wes, you know. I it never felt rushed or too slow. I just feel the pacing was really well done, even though it wasn't the same pace the whole movie. You know, you had your fast moments, your slow moments, the characters are just all so quirky. Everybody's quirky, which can be overbearing, but it wasn't, because you got just the right amount of all of them. The sisters, is it Adrian Brody?
Yes.
Yeah, the son. Yeah, the sisters. I was like, what is that? Are they supposed to be like birds? These women are weird.
Also, I think Adrian Brody, I'm not going to repeat it, but I think he has one of the absolute best character opening lines in any film ever. Like, it is just.
There were a lot of great lines. Like I kind of wish I'd been typing, like keeping notes when I watched it, but I just wanted to watch it too. Yeah. You know, I didn't want to be distracted, so I had my phone charging on the other side of the room the whole, until I needed to text my son something, because I was like, wait, this is too. I have to talk to him about this. And you know, I loved the little details about it. And some of the things I picked up on. I loved how it went full circle with the two scenes on the train. Even though the second time it was very sad. There was a lot of sadness in this movie. You saw how boisterous Ray Fiennes' character was. Gustav was, you know, he was the life of the hotel, right? But then you saw him eating alone in his room. And that made me real sad too. Like, I was like, oh, I felt like him tonight driving home, sitting on the freeway, eating my bean and cheese burrito. Like that was my dinner tonight. I was like, yeah, I can relate, dude, because I'm just sitting here in this freeway. So, but no, I was like, okay, I get it now. Like, I get why his movies are very popular. It's not above my head. I just was a very different person when I tried to watch the other movies. So, yeah, I there was a sadness, but like it didn't make me cry, which is rare. I usually cry at movies, and this movie didn't make me cry, which puzzles me. But it was just really touching. There was a deep touchingness to the way it ended with her sitting there reading the book. Like, I was like, the full circleness of this movie appealed to me a great deal. It came back to where it started, and I appreciated that about it.
Oh yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Like, everything you see the parallels and everything, and I think it's beautiful. Having this be your first time watching it, and I know you're gonna go back and watch it again. This movie just has like so many like little things, like those moments of sadness, everything that you catch different every time you see it, which makes this movie beautiful for me. I was gonna say something and now it just popped out of my head. But Derrick, all right, Mike, what did you think of the story? Sorry.
No, I love this story, honestly. It's honestly my favorite of Wes Anderson's stories. But part of the reason being is because it's a Wes Anderson fairy tale in a lot of ways. That never feels outlandishly over the top fantastical. It's funny because later on, one of my other favorites is of his is Fantastic Mr. Fox, an adaptation of Roald Dahl, Roald Dahl's novel. And that movie felt like both Roald Dahl and Wes Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I bring it up is because this has a very Dahl feel to it. It's his own story for sure, but you could see how much of a Dahl fanboy he is because he kind of weaves that style and those layers of storytelling into this story. It's almost like it the Dahl influence on him as a storyteller really emerges in this movie more so than it ever had prior to the Grand Budapest Hotel. And it ends up paving the way for an adaptation like Fantastic Mr. Fox, and then eventually other movies like Isle of Dogs later on. So I kind of love that about this. It's really like him crafting his own novel, and that's really what this movie felt like, more so than a lot of the dramedies that he had done prior to this. To me, this epic story of this lobby boy and this concierge, I mean, it's just so original and so different. And I think this was nominated for Best Original Screenplay the year that it came out, but I think it lost to Birdman, which is also a really good movie. But I for my money, I would have given it to Grand Budapest Hotel and Wes's writing here, just because the story is very original. It feels so rich. This world feels rich. These characters feel rich, and everything that happens to them as a result of Gustav really just being a good person and a more caring person than anyone else in the life of MedMD is really just a wonderful way to tell this narrative, to tell this story, and that fanciful nature of all of it, that fanciful epic nature of all of it is honestly beautiful. I don't think he's topped it from a story perspective since then. I think this is literally, and I said this earlier before we started, I think this is really his magnum opus. So
yeah, no, I agree with you. He hasn't really touched the success of this one, which we're going to get into, not at all. But funny enough that you mentioned Roald Dahl, because I love Roald Dahl, but this is actually based off of the works and everything of Stefan Zweig. He's an Australian writer and author who kind of wrote this book. So this is all kind of him, which I want to jump in because I haven't read any of his, how close he is to Roald Dahl. So it's quite interesting. But Derrick, what did you think about the story?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you guys mostly, and I think that there's I loved when you look at his run within this period where it's Moonrise Kingdom, the Grand Budapest Hotel, Fantastic Mr. Fox, Isle of Dogs, like that 4 run is really Wes Anderson kind of coming into his own as a storyteller, as a creator, and this movie feels very much, even just story-wise, where he finally has the ability to like really play with the world that he wants to create. So much of this before feels really restricted by budget, really restricted by just kind of centering only on characters. Yes, you still have the sights and sounds that you kind of come to know about Wes Anderson. But the Grand Budapest Hotel, story-wise, one of the things that I think is so brilliant about the story is it's got this big, vibrant pink hotel in the middle of a war-torn country in made-up Eastern Europe. Like that's something that is always working in the backdrop. Like this is a crime, caper, murder mystery set in war-torn World War II Eastern Europe. Like that's the whole thing that's working behind it. So this longing for nostalgia where we kind of reimagine the world that we lived in and just only want to think about the good things and only want to think about the things that we love, like living in this hotel and just breathing in this place that feels almost out of time. But in the end, when you talk about how, they took him out and shot him, like they're still living in this war-torn place where there are death squads that are stopping trains and murdering people because fascism has basically took over the hotel. And so Wes's ability to kind of convey all of those things without ever making this a tragedy, without ever turning it into something where you feel like, hey, he's going to bring you down, he's going to make you feel sad. Like, they have that wonderful moment where Gustav like unloads on Zero after he breaks him out of prison for not bringing the perfume and messing up all of these things and saying that stuff about his parents. And then he reveals that like, well, yeah, I'm an immigrant and my family was murdered by this fascist group that's going to take over our country. And like, you're just going to have these realizations of this, like, oh yeah, the Grand Budapest Hotel is a small part of a larger world, and they are clinging to this beautiful place with all they have, and that's why it's lasted for so long. That's why Zero has kept it for Agatha, because he was happy there for a time, even though he lost her very shortly after that. So I love that juxtaposition of being able to continually bring out this whimsy and this delightfulness and this kind of fun romp as we visit all these characters, but always going on in the background is a tragedy, is a war-torn country, is this world kind of falling apart around them, and them choosing to try to do the best they can. And I just love that. I think that's something that is incredibly special, particularly with this one, where he really nails that balance, because anything prior to this really leans more into the drama side, where the comedy is there, but really the sadness, the grief, the loss, the dealing with dead parents, the dealing with messy families, the dealing with careers, all of those types of things are all very prevalent in his early work. Whereas this one really strikes that beautiful balance where you can have all of those themes that he's very interested in, but he's bringing this brightness and color scheme and joy, and kind of just, even though things sucked, there were some good times in the bad. And I love that. I think that's something that's very singular about the Grand Budapest, which is what makes it so great. And I would pick Grand Budapest. I'm with you, Mike. I would pick Grand Budapest over Birdman. Strangely enough, I feel like they actually both tell very similar stories. But I do think that this one is much better. From a script perspective, yeah.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. Like Birdman, but I think this is just way better. And I think it would have honestly been nominated for more stuff, but since it came out in March, by the time everything came out for nominations and everything, the Academy was actually kind of what they did get nominated for was lucky they did. The Best Picture, Best Director, Best Original Screenplay, Best Cinematography, Best Film Editing, and it only won Best Original Score, Production Design, Best Makeup and Hairstyling, and Best Costume Design. So it actually didn't win like huge awards like we thought it would, which is unfortunate because it's such a good movie. But transitioning, I want to talk about this cast because I feel like Wes Anderson does a good job of bringing in brilliant people. And all of them want to work with him. So in this cast alone, we have Ray Fiennes playing Mr. Kostov, Murray Abraham playing older Mustafa, Matthew Almerac playing Serge, Adrian Brody playing Dimitri, Willem Dafoe playing Joplin, the crazy bodyguard assassin. We have Jeff Goldblum playing the deputy Kovacs, who's the lawyer. Harvey Keitel is the prisoner. Jude Law is the young writer at the beginning of the movie. We have Bill Murray, Edward Norton, Saoirse Ronan, Jason Schwartzman, Tilda Swinton, Tom Wilkinson, Owen Wilson, and the list goes on and on and on. A lot of these people, like I said earlier, this was their first time, but how do you feel about this cast, and what do you think the power is that Wes Anderson has to bring people in there? Because Edward Norton has mentioned in interviews, he doesn't make any money off of Wes Anderson films. Like in this movie, he made $4,000 and that was it. He lost money doing this movie. So what do you guys think of this and how does he do it, do you think? Mike, what do you think of this cast and everything?
This is a cast of actors. I mean, like literally there's not a single weak link in this bunch, and they all commit to their work like monumentally, not just in Wes Anderson movies, but in every movie. But the thing about being in a Wes Anderson movie is, that there's always going to be some deeper, richer human, themes to the movie and the richness to the characters as well. He's almost like if, Tarantino is pretty famous for getting supporting actors and actors nominated, for at Oscars. A lot of his movies come up. It's the same thing, similarly, I think. With Wes Anderson in the sense that like you're doing it for the craft, you're doing it for the beauty, and he seems to be a really chill, really like fun filmmaker who brings his cast together and they just enjoy making the movies. But I think obviously everybody's in it really for the art, and the beauty of it all. But yeah, I think he's just a really fantastic director at the same time. He's not a demanding one. He's not one that really needs to push people, past their limits. He actually lets them play to their strengths. Jeff Goldblum can be Jeff Goldblum. You know, Adrian Brody can be Adrian Brody. Willem Dafoe can be Willem Dafoe. You know, and they still fit into this universe and the universes that he creates beautifully. I mean, one of his muses really is Bill Murray, and Bill Murray kind of is able to be Bill Murray, you know, in most of these movies, like Moonrise Kingdom and you know, like Rushmore. But you know, I mean, like that combined with the beauty of the text and the narrative, and the dialogue, I think that's what keeps all of these actors coming back for more. You know, he's a director that knows what he wants. He's a director with a terrific and unique vision. And he's one that I think treats his cast incredibly well. It's why every single time he brings in a new someone that he hasn't worked with before, the next movie that comes around, that person's likely in that movie. Scarlett Johansson, Bryan Cranston, Jeffrey Wright. You know, he just keeps adding to his ensembles. You know, and it's just, I think his movies are a lot richer and more beneficial that way too.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like you mentioning, like once he brings somebody in, he kind of keeps them. Interesting fact that I found out: Tony Revolori, who plays Zero, young Mustafa, he was kind of the last choice for that role. And once he got cast in the role, Wes Anderson actually worked with him 4 months prior to them start filming to get how to work with him, like pretty much coached on how to do it, which I think is fantastic. And he's been on several other movies of his as well. Jen, what did you think about this cast and your remarks on? I know you haven't seen a lot of them, but like a lot of them do come back. And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I haven't seen a lot of them, but I did work at Blockbuster, so I do know that he does work with a lot of the same people. And I do, you know, I've seen stuff about his movies, so you know, I do know that obviously a director like that who works with the same people over and over, and not like small names, there's something about him, right? Like obviously he's not hard to work with, talented. There's something about him to keep people coming back. But I'm sorry, Edward Norton, I would work for $4,000. Like, oh no, but no,
he didn't mind. He was like, no, I know I'm not gonna make money. So.
I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna make money. It's $4,000. I'm so sorry. But I mean, if he's that good at getting people Oscars, somebody hook him up with Bradley Cooper, because that man is dying for one.
Never gonna get it. Never gonna get it. Sorry.
No, he's gonna get it.
I did realize though, with the conversation, I actually have seen a Wes Anderson movie, because I did not realize that Fantastic Mr. Fox was Wes Anderson, and I have watched that. So I just thought it was a Roald Dahl movie. So I guess I didn't pay attention to the credits. Anyway, no, the cast was every time someone came on the screen, I was just like, oh, you know, or it was someone I'd never seen before that I was just so fascinated with, because he had this knack for picking people who were no one I'd ever heard of, but had just the most unique face, or just something about them that was such a presence that the old lady at the beginning, right? First off, how they dressed her, I was just, they changed her costumes in a way where the colors she was wearing said a lot, but her face said a lot too. I don't know. There was just something about that woman. She had quite a presence. And I'm sure she's somebody somewhere.
I was going to say it's Tilda Swinton is who it is.
What?
Yes.
So they Tilda Swinton spent 8 hours in the makeup chair for this role.
Yes. For literally 30 seconds of screen time.
The money that, like, because he doesn't pay people a lot and everything like that, and everything's kind of low budget. The most expensive thing on this film was the makeup artist team for Tilda Swinton.
So that's why he couldn't pay.
Which won an Oscar.
Yeah.
Good thing.
Won an Oscar. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had, okay, maybe that's why her eyes kept kind of like drawing me in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that makes a lot more sense now, because I was like, this lady is captivating me and I have no idea who she is.
Yeah.
Okay, now I get it. And I probably saw her name in the credits and didn't even click with me. Wow. Yeah, it makes a lot more sense now. I'm like, this lady's so amazing. She's some lady they probably found like on a street somewhere. But his locations were characters too. Even down to the attic that Agatha lived in was just such a character. Yeah, I don't know. Everything about it, I just felt very intentional for him. There was nothing, there's a lot of filmmakers, and I like filmmakers like that, where, Mike and I have talked about Better Call Saul until like the cows come home, and nothing those filmmakers did was accidental. It was all very intentional, and I appreciate that, and I like that a lot because it enriches your experience every time you rewatch it. And so I think as I embark on this journey of watching Wes Anderson films, I will be able to rewatch them and find new things every time, like learning that was Tilda Swinton under all that makeup. So, and I also found some good articles like breaking down the movie and analyzing it, which helped me kind of get a deeper understanding of what was going. I mean, I could tell what was going on. Obviously, fascism, World War II, the soldiers, as the movie got on, their uniforms got darker and darker as the things got worse and worse and worse in this fake place. And I mean, there was a lot of stuff that you didn't need to be hit on the head with. It was pretty obvious, but no, there was a lot of other stuff going, almost like an undercurrent. But the cast itself, my God, just was like, and I love Ray Fiennes. I mean, I did hate him for a while after I saw Schindler's List twice in the theaters when I was in college, but I got over it. And I do love him. I do love him now. But I think my favorite moment, and I literally lit up like a candle, was when I heard Owen Wilson's voice before I saw him. Because I must have like reached to get a drink of water or something, and I heard him, and I was like, like, because I was waiting for him or his brother. I knew one of them was going to be in this because it's a Wes Anderson movie. So I was very excited and not disappointed. I thought the cast was superb. Just no notes, 10 of 10.
Oh yeah, no, I think the cast was superb. But you mentioning that you didn't realize it was Tilda Swinton, that kind of was a fate of luck because originally cast was Angela Lansbury.
Oh wow!
But then she had to back out, and that's when they went to Tilda was just like, "I will do it," and this was like her in, as she kind of fought to take over that role, like do whatever.
I love it.
So that's how I'm glad. Movie.
I'm just glad she didn't knock off Angela Lansbury at the time. I'd have been real mad.
But Derrick, what are your thoughts on the cast?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo almost everything that everybody said. I mean, this cast is absolutely cooking, and it rarely doesn't. I think when you take directors like Wes Anderson, Quentin Tarantino, David Fincher, even scripts written by Aaron Sorkinson, they all have these very, very specific cadences that you kind of have to embody, you have to embrace in order to even participate in those films. And Wes obviously has a very defined type of cadence in the way that he writes and the way that he wants it to speak, and so you really have to find the right people, which is why I think people want to continue to do it. I like Mike's point about this, this being the actors acting type of stack and people wanting to do it for the art. Like the money's not really why they're doing it. And I think a lot of that has to do with just Wes's ability to completely immerse himself in the world that he creates. So, I mean, he's very similar in the Fincher type of way, but like all of the newspapers that you read, those all have actual articles that were written by Wes Anderson. Like they're actual newspapers that you can read. Like they're physical newspapers that were written out with actual stories all printed out for stuff you're never going to see. All the currency, all the documents, like all of those things are created to perfection. But that just kind of serves this idea of like, oh, we're really immersing ourselves into an actual world. We're not just walking onto a set. Like we're embodying the Grand Budapest. We're living in Zabriki or wherever they're living in. Like they feel like they're actually a part of this. And I think that production design goes hand in hand with what he's able to actually get out of the actors. And because he goes so far into that, you can watch him in behind the scenes and stuff. Like he has an enthusiasm. That's what a lot of people say when they work with him, is that he has such an enthusiasm in between takes. And so as he lets them kind of do what they want, as he lets them do the things that he's looking for, even if he yells cut and he steps in, there's always this enthusiasm of like, we're going to create this. So I loved what you did here. Let's try it this way. Or here's what I wanted. Like, he's just very involved in a way that feels like he's a part of what they're doing. And I think that's some of the things that really draw this cast to come back over and over and over again and do it for pennies and beg to be a part of these movies. This is Ralph Fiennes just at his absolute best. I mean, he is just absolutely cooking in this movie. His comedic timing is just, I don't think people realized he had that ability because he didn't really do a whole lot that would say that he was able to do this. And he is just a bolt of magnetic energy in this movie. Trevor Rivoli, I think this is probably where he works best. I wish he would do more of this more prevalently because I think he plays off of Ralph Fiennes brilliantly. I think they have an incredible chemistry. That father-son relationship that Mike was talking about as being like the central core theme in this film, it doesn't work if those two don't make us believe that they have this relationship. And so you've got Trevor and Ralph Fiennes just really digging into this material and bringing that to life. And then you've got, everybody in the periphery, people like Adrian Bodie that understand the assignment, Luke Wilson, Bill Murray, Edward Norton, Tilda Swinton, Lea Seydoux for no other reason than to just have her in this movie. She doesn't do anything in this film. And it's like Wes Anderson was like, hey, I need a hot maid. Leah, are you available? She's like, yeah, that's cool. And it's just
even the background characters that are just like in the background, guys sitting on chair, are of name actors who are just
it's absolutely wild. That's one of the things I love about Wes Anderson films. This cast is one of the best he's put together. I think putting Ralph Fiennes front and center, absolutely brilliant. He's so good in this movie. Same, Jen, no notes. This is a perfect cast in my opinion.
Oh yeah. So now that we've been gushing over this movie for about 50 minutes, I did want to discuss Wes Anderson a little bit because this movie of Wes Anderson's is his highest grossing movie ever. It made $175 million worldwide. And then the next one underneath that is Royal Tenenbaums that only made $70 million. Why do you think this movie was just like everybody was captivated with it? And do you think that he is trying to capture this again in his newer films that he comes out? Or what is he missing that is not getting there again? We'll start with you on this one, Derek.
It's a great question. So I do think that this is by far and away his most accessible film. Because the whimsy overshadows the drama, which is not something that he typically does in a lot of his movies, especially things prior to that. I think Moonrise Kingdom is about as close as you get. You can feel him kind of inching into kind of this almost childlike wonder as he approaches this dollhouse setup that he has in his kind of production design. But the Grand Budapest, I mean, yes, it's wholly Wes Anderson. So somebody like me who gushes and stands over him, like everything you love about Wes is in this movie. But if you don't like Wes Anderson, you can actually still really enjoy the Grand Budapest Hotel. And I think that's something that really separates this movie out of his whole catalog. I would argue that The Fantastic Mr. Fox is very much in line with that as well. But that also is not solely Wes Anderson. It's adapted. Part of that screenplay, I didn't know this, but part of that screenplay was actually co-written by Noah Baumbach. And so there's kind of a shared pairing there, which I think is what really elevates it to be most people's kind of favorites, but I wouldn't even necessarily consider it a Wes Anderson film, even though it is. So the Grand Budapest, I think, just has this, I don't know. It's just that cynical whimsy that exists in this movie doesn't really exist in a lot of his other stuff, and I definitely don't think it exists anything past Fantastic Mr. Fox. When you get into things like Isle of Dogs, The French Dispatch, the Asteroid Cities, those are things where Wes Anderson is just kind of like, okay, I know what I am. I know what my vision is. I know what I want to do. I'm more obsessed with ideas. I'm more obsessed with philosophies. I'm more obsessed with like creation and creators. Those are the things that I want to focus on. So you can tell he doesn't really give a shit about how successful his films are. And I almost feel like he's regressed is the wrong word, but I feel like he's just kind of focused on the things that matter to him and not necessarily things that will matter to general audiences. Whereas I think the Grand Budapest is just one of those films that it just has a wide range of attraction where people just, you can relate to nostalgia, you can relate to crime caper, you can relate to quirky characters that are living in this bright, vibrant pink world. You can relate to a love story. You can, all of these things are things that are very relatable. Whereas something like The French Dispatch, which is just, hey, I love editors. I love working. I love writing. This is what it's like to write. And then you introduce the whimsy, and it's like, okay, I don't really care about that. Like these layers that he does, I think they get farther and farther away from the audience the more interested he gets in them. Whereas this one feels like the audience and his vision are the most aligned out of anything, which is why I think it's probably his most successful and one of his best. I think this is one of Anderson's absolute best.
I literally could not have said anything better myself than what you just said. Mike, do you have any initial thoughts or additional thoughts about this?
What I love about Wes Anderson just in general as a filmmaker is he's going to do whatever he wants to do. He's not trying to do a parody of himself. He's not trying to just coast off of the things that he's done before. He does these things because he loves doing them. It's who he is. It's inherent in him. I think when you look at Fantastic Mr. Fox, it's also another father-son story, right? When you look at a lot of these movies, there is a father-son story as well in Asteroid City. The only thing is, I think that there's something, for terrible pun, but there's something grand and the story. There is something larger and more epic to this story than some of the other stories that he's come up with in recent years. I think it took him a while to do something after Grand Budapest Hotel, right? Like what came after that? Was that Fantastic Mr. Fox?
It was Fantastic Mr. Fox, and then, which I think was like 2015, and then he didn't make Isle of Dogs until like 2018, and then 2021, and then 2023 for those, and then all of his short films, which I think is absolute. I think short Anderson is best Anderson, but that's a different podcast.
Henry Sugar, right? Got nominated for an Oscar, another Doll one. But when you think about it, there's larger gaps after the Grand Budapest Hotel and the next projects that he starts working on. And I think it's because he himself didn't know what he was going to do next. He himself probably thought, I just did this amazing story. I love this so much. Of course, I've got like the Fantastic Mr. Fox is done in his style, but again, to your point, Derek, it's not his story, right? And then after that, the next original movie that we get, I think, is Isle of Dogs after that. So it's like that's a big gap between his original movies, and I think it's because he didn't know really what he wants to do, and I still think he's trying to figure it out. And I think that's why we don't have anything on par with Grand Budapest Hotel that's come out in his filmography since then. I do think that the individual movies that he's come out with have had fairly ambitious things about them, as individual stories. I think French Dispatch, if you think about it, is a collection of short films almost,
Yeah. But it's really an anthology film put together. Yeah.
And it's the first time he'd ever done something like that. But it's a lovely anthology film. But at the same time, it's just not something that I think audiences can connect to as easily as a story as grand as this one. And I think that's something that has been missing from his movies since then. Not that he needs to do anything grand. And epic as this. But I think he went big and now he's going smaller, and it's just not resonating as well with audiences. Like you and I chatted about it, Eric. I'm not a big fan of Asteroid City as well. And it's just because I don't think the story really resonated with me nearly as wonderful as it's not as wonderfully crafted as I think Grand Budapest Hotel is. And who knows? I think the next one might be. We'll see.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. As you mentioned, Asteroid City is not my favorite. I have to go back and definitely give it a second chance.
Yeah, I do too.
Third chance, technically. But in that one, I kind of felt like he was trying to create a world like he did in Grand Budapest, but just wasn't as successful. But we are almost out of time, guys. So I want to get your guys' final thoughts on this film. Would you recommend it to people? Would you recommend Wes Anderson to the people? Yeah, we'll start with you on this one, Jen.
I would recommend this movie to people, but I need to watch other things before I would say you need to watch all of his movies. But that's just because I would need to know what to tell them to watch based on who I was telling. I think another thing real quick, for me, this movie, the caper aspect of it, a couple times, I got slightly more highbrow Clue vibes off of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it super appealed to me at times. And that it made me want to watch Clue. I'm not gonna lie, but you guys,
does have Ray Fiennes has some of that Tim Curry manic energy of running in from room to room in those final moments. Yeah, no, that's a great point.
Yeah, you kind of killed my vibe of wanting to watch Asteroid City, but we do love space in this house because my partner works in like science and labs and aerospace, so he tried to watch it and he didn't get into it. I knew he wouldn't. This is not his filmmaker at all. He's a Fast and Furious kind of guy. But no, I enjoyed this movie. I would recommend this movie to people as a good Wes Anderson starting point. Yes. Having not seen anything besides Fantastic Fox, but I have a list now. I have homework from my child to watch some more. So I'm looking forward to that journey.
Perfect. Mike, what are your final thoughts on this film, and would you recommend? I mean, obviously, all of us will, but
yeah. Again, magnum opus. It's currently his magnum opus, unless he comes up with something that's even bigger and more appealing, to mainstream crowds than this. Which I think would be hard pressed for him to do, just given his sensibilities as a filmmaker and his specificity as well. I think that this might go down as probably his greatest cinematic achievement. Would I recommend him to other people? Absolutely. I think a lot of people, to your point, Eric, from earlier in the podcast, most people associate him with the aesthetic portions of his career, very centered perspectives, stop motion, different, Owen Wilson in every movie, Bill Murray in every movie, and quirky, fast talking individuals. But it's more than that. There's more to his films that's going on when you look past just those aesthetic quirks. And I think that if folks get a chance to really spend time diving into the individual stories that he crafts and what he's trying to say with a lot of these films and these characters and the relationships that they have between them, I think that they'll discover the same levels of complexity and an emotional investment that we ended up feeling whenever we visit a Wes Anderson movie. So I feel like I definitely would recommend Wes Anderson. I think that this is the perfect starting point, as Jen mentioned. But get deeper, and you'll see that there's more to him than stop motion foxes and pastels. So
yes, no, and that's truly like once you watch one of his movies, watch it again because you'll get something different, and it'll just keep growing and growing. Before I get your final thoughts on this, Derek, Nom Talk Network has redeemed Hydrate, so everybody hydrate really quickly. Cheers. But Derek, what are your final thoughts, and would you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think we're all kind of in alignment. I agree. This is a magnum opus for him. This is Apex Mountain, Mount Rushmore. And I think this is a fantastic starting point. I'm actually really glad, Jen. I know we take Mr. Fantastic Mr. Fox aside. I think if you are trying to introduce somebody to Wes Anderson, this is the way to do it. Because if you're not on board with the Grand Budapest, there is nothing else in his filmography that you're going to want to sign up for, because it is truly the most accessible. Like Mike said, it's the grandest of his films. He's never really made anything like it, even though it has everything that you love about early Wes Anderson and late Wes Anderson. It really is just this amalgamation of his entire career. And I don't want to say he's peaked. I think there's still plenty more that he's got to tell us, but this is, this is it. This is what he can do. So this is a great introduction. And I would even say, for taking Wes Anderson as a whole, I would start with the Grand Budapest. I'd move to Moonrise Kingdom and then do Fantastic Mr. Fox. If any one of those three attach you to him, then go back and watch Royal Tenenbaums, Bottle Rocket, all of these older films. Then maybe you'll have a different perspective of French Dispatch, Asteroid City. Those films, those latter films, are very much for fans, and even not even all his fans, but like they're very much like things like French Dispatch and Asteroid City. Like they're not for people to just walk into an Anderson film not knowing what they are. Like you've really got to know who he is. So I would absolutely recommend this film for sure. And then I think as you explore more of his filmography, I think you kind of anchor this here, go 2 years back and 2 years forward. And then if you want to expand, that's really whether or not Wes Anderson is for you. So.
Oh yeah. But guys, that's all the time we have tonight to talk about this wonderful, wonderful movie of Grand Budapest. I want to thank you guys for being here. I want you guys to let everybody know where they can find you out there. We'll start with you on this one, Mike.
Yeah, of course. So you guys can find me at TidyBullBoy182 on Twitter and Instagram. But most of my work is on thenerdsofcolor.org, whattowatch.com, and that's in LA.
Well, thank you for being here. Jen, thank you for being here for your first Wes Anderson. Where can people out there locate you?
You can find me on Instagram at do_as_Peggy says, and on Letterboxd, where I've been reviewing a lot of crime documentaries the last couple days. Sorry. And that's Peggy Says on Letterboxd. And then you can follow our cosplay adventures at California Avengers on Instagram, not on Letterboxd because we don't review movies, but we just dress up and go visit kids. So yeah. And we'll be at WonderCon soon doing a panel. It's exciting.
Ooh, that sounds fun. Thank you for being here. Derrick, where can everybody out there locate you?
You guys can find me on pretty much all media sites, Threads, Twitter, Letterboxd, Instagram, at DRock Comedy. It's DROK Comedy. I've been going through on Letterboxd. I've been going through and watching a bunch of blind spots and just trying to catch up on a bunch of films that every film critic should have seen that I just haven't yet. So I've been working my way through all of those, and that's been a really fun experience this year. So definitely check that out. I try to review, at least quick review, every film that I watch in some way. And then you can follow me. You can check out all my work at nerdbot.com. Tons of reviews for all kinds of movies there. You can read the full pieces there. Then obviously you can find me on Facebook because yes, I'm still on there at just Derrick Murray. Just by my name.
Perfect. Well, thank you again for being here. It's always a fun group of people to be with. Thank you guys for tuning in, and be sure to join our Discord to keep this conversation going, as well as subscribing to all of our platforms at Nom Talk Network. Please tune into our next show, which will be Friday, which we will be discussing episodes 4 through 6 of Avatar: The Last Airbender. I'm your host, Erric Ramirez, and you can find me on all socials at Heartless7. That's HARTL, the number 3SS7. But until Friday, everybody have a great, fantastic day. Bye.